The sun had no mercy that day, laying its fire over the town square until the wooden planks of the market post groaned and smoked like a sinner's conscience. Folks said the West was a place of freedom, but out here freedom was measured in whispers, and whispers carried farther than gunshots. I reckon you could die of shame quicker than thirst, and Sarah Jane Dalton knew that well, because she was tied there, pale and proud, bound for a crime she never committed. Her father's drunkenness was her only sin, and the town had made her wear it like a scarlet brand. The townspeople gathered, dust swirling at their boots, mouths twisted with fascination and disdain. Some spat tobacco into the dirt, others hid smirks behind their fans. A girl's dignity was cheaper than whiskey out here, and cheaper still when her father had traded his for the bottom of a bottle. Sarah's eyes, though lowered, carried an ember of defiance, a quiet light in the blaze of humiliation. Her father, Ezekiel Dalton, watched from the shadows of a leaning saloon porch. Once he had been a man of broad shoulders and good stories, but liquor had melted him down to a heap of shame. He could not look long at his daughter's suffering, though the world demanded that she bear the weight of his. He drank to forget, but the bottle never let him. Then came Jed Carver, moving through the crowd like a shadow with boots that made no unnecessary noise. 32 years old and weathered by solitude, he was the kind of man who carried silence like a weapon and gentleness like a secret. He lived alone on a ranch past the river, where he fixed fences more than he spoke words. Some said his heart had dried up along with the soil. But when he saw Sarah, bound and hungry, something stirred. He stopped before her, bread in his hand, rough, unremarkable bread, but warm, carrying the scent of home. Without asking, without announcing himself, he broke it in two and placed it against her tied hands. The crowd gasped. A kindness given at the wrong time was scandal in itself. Sarah's eyes flickered up, startled, and in that shared moment there was no shame, only the stunned recognition that someone had seen her, not her father's failure. From across the square, Silas Crow leaned against the water trough, watching. 26, handsome in a crooked sort of way, Silas had charm that clung to him like dust, cheap and everywhere. But beneath his grin was hunger, not for bread or love, but for conquest. He had long noticed Sarah Jane, not for her spirit but for the victory she represented. Seeing Jed Carver offer her bread lit a bitter coal inside him. By sundown, the town hummed with gossip, the drunk's daughter and the lonely rancher. Did you see it? Words twisted faster than barbed wire, and soon the story was no longer about Sarah's punishment, but about what passed between her and Jed. Sarah bore it quietly, but her chest ached at the thought of dragging Jed into her storm. Jed, for his part, said nothing. His silence, as always, was its own rebellion. Sarah returned home that night, untied but still burdened. Ezekiel slumped by the fire with his bottle, muttering apologies he could not remember by morning. She scrubbed the floor, washed her face, and prayed, not for herself, but for strength to forgive. In the days that followed, Jed came by. Sometimes he brought food, sometimes firewood, sometimes nothing at all but his steady presence. He never spoke of pity. He spoke little of anything. But he looked at her as though she were whole, and that look alone mended something inside her. The town did not forgive so easily. Women at the well turned their backs, men at the store smirked, and children repeated what their parents whispered. Sarah walked through it all with her chin lifted, though her heart trembled. Each act of kindness from Jed seemed to make the whispers louder. She feared she was undoing him, dragging him into ridicule he did not deserve. Silas Crow grew bolder. One afternoon, as Sarah drew water, he cornered her with that sly grin. "You think Carver can save you," he said, voice smooth with poison. "He's a ghost of a man. Me, I'm flesh and blood. You'll see soon enough." Sarah held her ground, her voice soft but firm. "You're not what I see." She turned away, and in her refusal was a blade sharper than any knife. Silas's smile faltered. Pride, out here, was worth more than gold, and hers had cut him deep. Meanwhile, Jed's visits drew Sarah into moments that stitched her spirit back together. They mended a fence at dusk, his calloused hands steadying hers. He handed her wildflowers still rooted in soil. as if to say she was not to be plucked but planted. Ezekiel, watching through blurred eyes, felt something crack inside him. Not resentment, but shame that a stranger had shown his daughter the dignity he had failed to protect. One night, Ezekiel stumbled outside with his last bottle. He stayed at it, trembling. His daughter slept inside, peace softening her face at last. He lifted the bottle to his lips, then smashed it against the earth, his sobs swallowed by the prairie wind. He was no saint, not yet, but a man does not lift himself from the dirt without first deciding he is worth lifting. Yet peace never lasts long under the weight of gossip. Silas, humiliated, spread a rumor crueler than truth, that Sarah was already ruined by Jed Carver's visits. The town's laughter was sharper now, less about Ezekiel's drinking and more about Sarah's supposed fall. Jed, realizing his presence had become a target on her back, began to withdraw. He left food at her door without knocking, left tools fixed without asking. His silence grew heavier, and Sarah's heart sank. For a moment, it felt as though shame had won again. The storm broke on a Sunday morning. The whole town gathered in church, dust on boots, hymnals in hand, gossip buzzing low. Sarah walked in, Ezekiel at her side, sober but shaking. The stays burned hotter than the summer sun. Silas smirked from his pew, waiting to watch her break. Then Jed Carver rose. He moved down the aisle with that same steady silence, every step deliberate. He did not make speeches, did not shout his claim. He simply stood at Sarah's side and offered his arm. The church grew still. It was an act quieter than thunder, but louder than any gunshot. One man standing by a woman the world had scorned. Silas's smirk withered. The whispers faltered. Even gossip has its limits when faced with unshakable calm. Sarah took Jed's arm, and for the first time in years, Ezekiel Dalton's shoulders straightened. From then on, Silas Crow found no foothold. His sneers lost their power, his charm grew stale, and without Sarah's fear to feed on, he was nothing more than a shadow skulking at the edges of town. Ezekiel kept his vow, trading bottles for labor, shame for small attempts at dignity. Sarah, though scarred by memory, walked lighter, her steps matched to Jed's. Their wedding was no grand affair, just hymns carried by prairie wind, a handful of townsfolk watching, some begrudging, some softened. But in the way Jed looked at her, and the way Sarah held herself, there was a grandeur greater than gold. Not passion that burned quick, but trust that burned steady. And so it was that the drunk's daughter found her place, not in the chains of gossip, but in the quiet strength of a man who chose her when it cost him something. Together they built not just a life, but a testament, that dignity could be lost, broken, mocked, yet still pieced back together by hands that refused to let go. And if you listen close, out on the prairie when the wind settles, you might hear it whispered still. Love is not thunder, but bread passed into bound hands. Dignity is not given, it is chosen, stitch by stitch, by those who dare to stand.